Now then. Oh, good. I had a plan. I did a sound check before all of this began. I had another plan, though. Around 2008, I moved from New York to Scotland. I came to Edinburgh to sing as a lay clerk in the cathedral there. Just like the provost who's returned now from a week's sabbatical, rather this week from 3 months' sabbatical, I too wanted a break from a busy life in the busiest city in the country. So I boxed up the contents of my apartment and moved everything into my parents' basement, where it still sits today. Yes, 14 years later. God bless my mother for keeping it all there. I'm not sure that she expected to run a storage unit out of her house, and to be honest, I wasn't really quite sure that my stuff would be there that long. But that's how things turned out. Not as I envisaged them, and not as I'd planned. In a strange turn of events, my life is now unfolding over the ocean, some 3,000 miles away from New York City. Mary and Joseph had a plan for their lives, and it probably didn't involve having a child when they did. My guess is they'd mapped out an entirely different design. And it would be no surprise that when Mary told Joseph that she was pregnant, that put a spanner in the works. That's probably putting it mildly, actually, because it wasn't how either one of them had envisioned their lives. It wasn't how things were supposed to be. Accordingly, Joseph thought he'd correct the course. At first, he tried dismissing Mary quietly. I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked. Quietly? I mean, what would have happened to Mary? What would have happened to the child? Nevertheless, it appeared to Joseph that it was the right thing to do to end this relationship with this woman. But then God had a message for Joseph. An angel appeared to him in a dream, confirming what Mary probably had already told him, that Mary was pregnant in an unconventional way. And as strange and unexpected as it was holy. This unorthodox path would be part of God's plan. As unorthodox as it was, it actually wasn't that unusual. Well, at least not for Scripture, because it's full. Scripture is full of odd routes for God's people. God's Spirit blazes a new trail off the beaten path in the desert with the strangest people. God often appears in situations you wouldn't expect and accompanies people in places that they didn't choose or even hope for. Irregularity is part of the divine story. And yet religion and civilizations shaped by religion often hold as sacred the conventional, to the point of not being able to see goodness or virtuousness outside of it. Of course, established patterns exist for a reason. They foster health and good relationships and support systems. We do things in a particular order and in a particular way because we recognize from experience that there are best practices. But it's more than that. It's more than just society's prescriptions and folk not wanting to be embarrassed. Folk are wired to believe that if they aren't normal, that if things don't happen in the prescribed, set way, that there's something wrong with them. If we're good, we're golden. If we behave and walk the right path, we'll be righteous in the sight of God. Deviation gets you in trouble. Joseph thought he was being righteous. At least that's what the gospel says. It says he thought he was doing the right thing, trying to right his course. This wasn't how respectable relationships were intended to be, not the right design for partnership and child rearing. It seemed best to Joseph to step away from what was inappropriate for good people to be a part of. It seems perfectly reasonable to want to be normal. But if you want the facts, it isn't normal where God works. At least not when it comes to big world-changing moments. It seems that God often needs to shake things up in order to get people's attention or deliver the kind of help that people need. So, keep hoping for the ordinary. I don't blame you, not one bit. I certainly don't wish for anyone to have distress or trouble, least of all me. But don't desire too much for the traditional life, because if you want to be a part of God's world-changing plan, you might need something strange to happen. And when it does, instead of trying to rectify the situation, wait. In the unusual, in the idiosyncratic, in the things that are not supposed to be, you may find yourselves living, just like I did, in a whole new, fantastic place.